All right, I'll call tonight's meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Jerry Lynn, will you take roll call, please?
Member Castleman.
Here.
Member Sapola.
Here.
Member Eastwood.
Present.
Member Haddock.
Present.
Member Howdishaw.
Here.
Member Lewis. Member Seamers.
Here.
Chairman Harris.
Present.
Mr. Manson is absent tonight, and the staff is here.
Thank you, Jerry. I will call for a motion to adopt the agenda as written that was published for tonight's meeting. So moved. Do I have a second? I have a first and a second. Any changes or additions for tonight? All in favor? Okay, thank you. I'll call for a motion to accept the minutes from the December 9th, 2014 meeting. I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. First and a second. Any changes? Did anybody see any changes? Any discussion? All in favor? Broke his mic. Did you get that, Jerry Lynn? Yeah. Any noes? And one abstention. Thank you. No public comment this evening. I do see we had the Eagle Scout project tonight. I assume he's coming at 7 o'clock. It was our thought.
I believe I told him 7 o'clock, so I'll stick around and outside and wait.
If our meeting's still going on, we can put him in later
Sure.
in the meeting. All right. Committee reports. Mr. McLean, do you want to talk about budget committee that met last week?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First off, before I get started on that, any of your guys' sheets, if you want to pass them down to the end where Jenny is, Meredith will pick those up. Please and thank you. Committee meeting. Actually, there was a typo there. It was January 20th, not December 20th. At that meeting, we discussed schedule of fees timeline. The schedule of fees are the fees that are approved by council. Those are the fees that, any fees that are related to the Parks Department, you guys approve first and then goes to council if we do any changes. That timeline has been laid out for suggested changes need to be approved by the park board in February and will have to go forward to council in March. Those will, I'll let Mr. Manson get here.
Please make note, Mr. Manson is tardy.
But he has his green shirt on.
But he does wear his green shirt, so we'll let it go this time.
Yeah.
No, it was just the shirt we got last month. It's new. It's new. Had to break it in. Okay. All right, continue,
Okay.
Mr. McLean. Thank you.
Yes. So anyway, we will, the budget committee did discuss a couple of fee adjustments that we will be bringing forward to the board at the February meeting. CIP preparation, capital improvements, that goes to final approval. That will need final approval in April, so the committee will be sending out emails and we will be laying out our projects about the 1st of March, somewhere around that first or second week of March. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you guys there and help assist with what projects we want to lay out for the next year and the next 5 years. Operations timeline as well, all of those were discussed at that meeting. Any questions?
Just a quick FYI. We're currently slated for March 10th as a CIP meeting for the board to get everybody together. March 10th is our tentative date today. If that changes, I'll let you know, and I'll send an email to remind that, but that was the date we discussed. Yes, sir.
Did you guys add things to CIP or discuss CIP items or?
That's
We
what March-
discussed-
That's
that's
the
what-
March 10th meeting.
We did
is.
discuss, but that is the March 10th meeting
Yeah.
will be what adjustments might need to be made or new projects.
This was very, yes, 50,000-foot view of just the timeline to get things together. Any questions for Mr. McLean, or myself, or Mr. Manson, who was there, or Mr. Rulo, who was there? Who else was there? Oh, Sheldon was there. No, thank you, Mr. McLean. Let's go ahead and do staff reports. Mr. McLean, you can start.
As in the packet, I have a written report. I will highlight just a couple of things. Recreation and competitive basketball are in full swing at this time. All our spring sports are open for registration, so we're accepting registrations for those. We had multiple meetings attended over the last month and a half since the last meeting that we've had. I would like to highlight Recreation Coordinator Jerry Keith went to NRPA's event school last week, so she is going to be bringing forth some great ideas for adjustments for special events, maybe some new ones and things of that nature. So we'll be looking forward to hearing how all that went. She did submit a report on that, and we'll have more in the future. Also, the Alley Camp Take Women's Self-Defense class was last Thursday, January 22nd, at the school, high school, and there were 65 participants. Mr. Kemp thanked the Raymore Parks and Recreation Department for the assistance in hosting that event. He was very pleased with the event. The event itself was well accepted in the community, and of course was a great event, so wanted to highlight that. Those were the highlighted ones. We're working on other special events and prepping for Touch a Truck, Jog with Your Dog, Easter Carnival, as well as starting on preparations for 4th of July. I'll entertain any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. McLean? No, thank you, sir. Mr. Rulo.
Thank you. I also had a written report in the packet, but just wanted to highlight a few items. The park staff has completed 10 of the 12 tee pads on the front 9 of the disc golf course, pouring the concrete. The other 2 will be completed tomorrow. The weather being nice for the last couple of weeks has really helped this project move on. They've also, the back 9 has been laid out, so we're working on clearing some brush and hopefully get that started here pretty quick also. Also, staff spent some time watering the over 100 new trees that were planted this fall. It's been very dry, so we took a day and a half and went out and put some desperately needed water on some of our new little plants. And last, just wanted to add that myself and maintenance worker Jake Powers attended the Kansas Shade Tree Conference 2 weeks ago, where Jake Powers received his arborist certification certificate. So that was nice, and now we have 2 certified arborists on staff, so looking forward to that. I will accept any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Rulo? All right, one question I got is the tree that was removed from the dam, why was that removed?
It's supposed to say trees. That was a typo, sorry. There's a bunch of unwanted brush growing up on the water side, and you don't want any trees growing alongside of your dam, because that just, when they die, it decays. It's just a hole there for water to start leaking. So
Okay.
we try to keep it clear.
My thought was opposite. If it's alive and the roots are in there, doesn't it kind of hold it together and make it stronger? No?
No, not really.
No,
You
okay.
really don't want any trees growing in your dam at all.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any questions, anybody? Okay. Old business, an update on the RFP for Hawk Ridge Park Trail. Mr. Rulo.
Excuse me. At the last meeting, you all, we had an action item to go back and start on our RFP for the Hawk Ridge Park Trail. Staff is currently working on the RFP. Since then, the city has formed, or has actually, has an employee that is doing all the city grants. A grant opportunity came up that we will be able to use for this trail. It's part of the Missouri Department of Natural Resource Grant. So there's been a committee of probably 4 or 5 people working on this. It's going to be 40-60 split, 40% for us, 60% for the Department of Natural Resources. This is supposed to be back, I think they'll decide in late July, early August if we're accepted for this. So when we do the RFP, we're going to do it with the intent of this project being early fall. With the, hopefully with the monies that we get with this, it'll end up being about 64,000, and the Department of Natural Resources about 96,000. So if everything comes in true to what we had on there, so it'll be a great help, and that's kind of where we're at. Just wanted to give you guys an update.
Awesome, good news. Any questions? Yes, yes, ma'am.
What exactly does the grant do for us?
Pays for 60%.
Yeah, it pays, what does the 60%, is that involving the trail around the lake
Yeah.
or anything else?
No, this one's just for the trail.
Just for the trail?
Just for the trail. They'd pay for 60% of it, yes.
Thank you.
Is there a max dollar amount on that? I mean, because we've talked about different materials and different widths, and is there a max dollar amount that they will accept the grant up to?
Yeah, it's a $200,000, up to a $200,000 grant, but they'll only pay 80% of it. And working with the Parks, or the Director of, Public Works Director, we get so many points with the Department of Natural Resources when we do grants like this, and at 40%, we're getting the highest amount of points that will help the city out also. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we went with it.
Anything else, anybody? Oh, yes, ma'am.
So do we have to submit what material we're using for the trail, or do they not really care as long as?
Right now, the way we presented it was the 10-foot wide concrete, the most expensive one.
good.
So then whenever, if we get that, great, and if not, we scale back, so.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to new business. Item A is a proposed change in the organizational chart. I think we had a small discussion about this in December. Mr. Fairborn's going to relate back to it and get us back to the specifics on the budget items related. Mr. Fairborn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Essentially, this, and I'll keep this brief due to the length of the executive session to come, it involves 2 recommendations from the city manager's office. We will be taking these to the city council, and we are hoping for park board support on them. First recommendation is to assign the duties of the Director of Buildings and Grounds, which had currently resided with the Parks and Recreation Director, over to the Public Works Director. A few points of reasoning associated with that. Survey of surrounding cities has us being the only one of what we call the Big 13 that we're allowed to survey, so that we have apples to apples, that actually has the setup that we do, where Parks and Recreation handles all of buildings and grounds. There are some morphs to that, but for the most part, every single municipality that we checked with, the buildings and grounds resides in Public Works. That's actually where it resided here from the beginning of time until Janet Snook came here. At approximately the same time that Janet took over as the Parks and Recreation Director, almost the exact same time, Mary Yeager took over as the Public Works Director. Mary hated buildings and grounds. Janet loved buildings and grounds. And so the marriage was made. It was always not the perfect fit, because Janet, by her own admission, didn't have a whole lot of the technical expertise that was associated with the buildings and grounds process. She was very green team oriented, very building oriented, but there are a lot of technical aspects involved. When Janet left, and Mary had already left by that time, Mike Crass was in charge of Public Works. John Kennedy came in, and the differences became even more glaring than when Janet was here. Most of our last heavier lifting buildings and grounds projects have been run by Mike. 2 perfect examples of that are the tower out front, which is leaning towards the building, and obviously that's an engineering issue, so Mike has taken that completely over. And Mike did, excuse me, all of the buildings and grounds directorship associated with the entire remodel downstairs. For those reasons, we would recommend that the park board support the city manager's recommendation that's going to go to the council, that the position be moved over. And we'll get to the math of that here in just a second, because I wanted to net out both of these recommendations. The second recommendation is that the public information officer be moved entirely under administration from Parks and Rec. It would not mean a loss of duties being given to Parks and Recreation by that particular individual. It's Kyle Worthington. But what we have noticed over time, the genesis of that particular position was that Janet wanted someone who could help with specifically the parks component of the Raymore Review and also do some of the PR associated with parks when special events were taking place. None of those duties would be lost, but over time, a significant portion of Kyle's work has been co-opted into doing the same PIO information that was originally about 50% of his duties, and he is now a lot in the administrative side, performing the same duties for other departments, for the police department. So his duties to the Parks and Recreation haven't shrunk, but his day-to-day operation certainly doesn't justify 50% of his salary being paid for by Parks and Recreation. Again, there would be no difference in the duties he is currently performing to the Parks and Rec. It would simply be administration is letting him do those things for Parks and Recreation the same way administration lets him do those things for the police department or any other department of the city. The math associated with these is on the last page of the handout, and the net effect of all of this, which would mean that the buildings and grounds component, buildings and grounds director component, which was 15% of the Parks and Rec director's salary, was being paid for out of the general fund. None of the other salaries currently associated that are being paid for out of the general fund would be, or that are being paid for, that are being paid for out of the general fund would need to be absorbed by parks, because that's mostly the lower level duties associated with doing the mowing and some of the, if we've got to have some things moved and the parks people come over and help. Next year that may change slightly because Mr. Rulo and Steve Welch over in Public Works are doing an analysis this year of the amount of time that it is taking. There will probably be minimal changes to have to be reabsorbed next year by the Parks and Recreation Department. The immediate effect of this, however, is that 15%, what we did was we took the current salary that was being paid to Mr. Kennedy before he left, and we assumed that same salary, which is probably conservatively high. We assumed that same salary from March through the end of the year, and 15% of that salary would have been paid for out of the Administration Department General Fund. We rolled that back over into Parks and Recreation. At the same time, we took the 50% of Mr. Worthington's salary that's being paid for out of Parks and Rec, rolled that into administration. The net effect of all of those is in the bottom right. The general fund will be picking up, and then of course we reallocated Mr. Crass's salary, but all of that's within the general fund. The general fund will be picking up $7,464 more dollars, and the park fund will be gaining $24,373 in the current fiscal year prior to the end of the year. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Does that make sense to everybody? You explained very well. So we need to make two motions. There's two recommendations. We need to, you can ask all the questions you want.
I hate to, but how does this affect the infamous memorandum of understanding? Did I say that right?
Not at all.
So it still stands? Do we still require it?
The memorandum of understanding?
And what I'm referring to is the memo between the park board and the city where the parks director is shared. And I think what you're saying is that's no longer going to be the case.
No, the Parks and Recreation Director's role does not change at all. This is a role separate and apart from that, the Buildings and Grounds Director's role.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I think I understand.
Any other questions? Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
All right, I motion that we accept the recommendation of the city manager as
Which one?
pertains.
Try to make two motions.
All
Let's
right,
do
two
one, yeah.
motions.
Let's make the first one, we'll do it, and then we'll do the second one.
All right, first motion will be the recommendation that we take the city manager's position of Public Works that the duties of the Director of Buildings and Grounds be assumed by the Public Works Director.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, first and second, any questions? The motion is for the Director of Buildings and Grounds for the duties of Directors of Building Grounds to be assumed by the Public Works Director. Any other questions? All in favor? Unanimous?
All right, second motion is regarding the funding of Public Information Officer, be removed from the Parks and Recreation and assumed by the General Fund Administration Department.
Second. All right, I have a first and I have a second. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Thank you, Mr. Manson. I put you on the spot there with the two motions. You were trying to simplify it, but
I know, nothing new there.
yeah. Okay, new business item B, Memorial Park Tennis Courts, Rec Park, and Basketball Court renovation projects. So I got some clarification on this. This was if anybody read the full report, this was in, I want to say August of last year, is that right? August of last year. We had already approved an RFP for the tennis courts. That also included screens, netting, wind screens, that's the
Yes.
term. Wind screens. We are now bringing this back forward for a new RFP for Memorial Park, Rec Park tennis courts without the wind screens, adding the basketball court renovation at the same time. If we go ahead and approve for this, we also have a budget amendment to make to correct. Did I leave anything out, Mr. McLean? If I missed any questions, I guess we can go ahead and ask if I missed anything, if something doesn't make sense. Yes, ma'am.
I thought the windscreens were important for where the location was and for the cost, benefit, maybe not.
The windscreens themselves were $8,160. The staff believes that we can get by without doing that and working on doing all the surfacing and get the discount by doing all the surfacing at this time. And we can add the windscreens back in if you would like for the RFP, or we can wait and do those at a later date. Right now, there was some concern with staff on the strength of those nets on the fence that we currently have as well. So that is why we have discussed it and preferred not to recommend putting the windscreens up at this time.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So does that mean that we're gonna have to do new fencing when we wanna put those windscreens in? Or are we able to just anchor them?
Might have to do some reinforcement. We wouldn't have to put up all new fencing.
Okay.
Fencing is good.
Okay.
When you say reinforcement, what, putting the poles in deeper?
Or extra poles or just?
Thicker poles?
I think the fencing poles that are in there will be fine for the fencing. One of the big things is the screens are used for a privacy deal, and right now the schools use this for their tournaments. And the way we're set up, our bleachers are on the outside of the fence. When parents come to watch the tournaments, they would not be able to see the kids play. And I believe whenever there's different, I'll call them weights of those screens, also wind screens, and they have some very heavy ones and then they have lighter ones. I don't think we would be able to use the professional style. We would have to use one of the lower end styles, which would be fine. So whenever
And
we
was
get
it, it was also putting in cross braces?
there. Yes.
Cross braces for that support.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be new poles, new chain link, it's putting cross braces to support the weight.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, seems like when we talked before, though, that the high school was wanting them because of so much wind coming through there, it blocked the wind. Were they wanting it from a certain direction, or did I totally make that up?
As far as I know, when we first started talking about it, we went to them and asked them if they would like to help us pay for them, and they said no.
Well, I remember helping Tay, but,
Yeah.
but
Right.
they didn't
Well,
want them,
but the,
period.
but like Mr. Rulo said, or stated, their concern is spectator,
Yeah.
cannot see. So, the last time I talked to them, I did not have a solid answer of saying yes or no.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I ask? Were the windscreens for both Memorial Park and Recreational Park?
Just recreation park,
Just Recreation Park?
Just
Which is more
recreation.
open,
right.
because there's more trees in
Yes.
Memorial Park.
We can add it to the RFP if board would like to add it to the RFP. It will change the cost, it will raise
Right,
the quote that I put into the
right.
memo, it would raise it by $8,000.
And the school uses both the Memorial Park tennis courts and the recreational tennis courts?
Just recreation tennis.
Just the, so that is where we would put them. So
Mhm.
that is why they don't want them, because it would,
They use Memorial?
I do,
Oh,
I know they use
Junior
Memorial for
varsity.
practice, that I know.
varsity tournaments and everything like that, if having them, are held at Recreation Park. Our main concern right now is that also with cutting the cost of the
Sure.
screens, the cracks have widened
Yes.
over this winter
Right.
since this RFP went out, and actually we're seeing an increase of the material that it's gonna take to fill it.
Okay,
We actually will see an increase of almost $4,000 from the original quote.
so the quote that you have here, for the recreational park, 43,590, you would have to put $4,000 more because the cracks
No,
have
that
opened up?
is what we,
That is in there?
yes,
Okay.
in August when we brought this to the board,
Right,
it was 37,000.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. McLean, how much did we originally have budgeted for this project?
This project was not originally budgeted, the recreation park. What you guys approved on the amendment was to utilize park sales tax fund as well as the funding from the, I believe, the suit that we had against the previous, yes, the previous construction
Yep.
company. That was all in last year's budget, so what we proposed was that we move the $40,000
40,000.
from the CIP that was allocated for the park maintenance enclosure. So that 40,000 was set to go towards this project. Then we have 45,000 currently this year for the basketball courts. Now that was with a 2-inch overlay of asphalt. Staff is not recommending that we do the 2-inch asphalt overlay because our courts are in good enough condition that we were stated by the contractor when he came out to do the quotes that we had it a good 3 to 5 years left before we would even have to do that. So we're just talking an acrylic seal of the current courts and repaint. So with that money, then with we had allocated it in 2016, fiscal year 2016 CIP, we had allocated $20,000 for the painting and the resurface of Memorial. By combining that, we can do all three of these projects with the current 45 for the basketball courts this year and the 40 from last year from the facility enclosure, park maintenance facility enclosure. So that would give us 85. And we would not have to.
And in
we
theory,
would
if all
not-
these estimates are right, we're still saving money.
Yes, correct. We
Okay.
would still be saving money. And we could,
Yeah.
like I said, if we wanted to, we do have in park sales tax fund, we could add in the request for the screens in the RFP if we would like. It's a request for proposal. We can adjust accordingly after we get that in.
All right. That makes sense to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We've weeded through everything.
So we need to make a budget amendment and,
Make a
Yeah,
motion to
reissue.
approve the RFP
but do we need to make a budget amendment as well?
after we approve this. Yeah, because if it doesn't get approved, no sense in making a budget amendment.
All right. Motion is to make a budget amendment.
No.
Pardon me. The RFP, to approve the RFP for this project that would encompass the Memorial Park tennis courts, Recreation Park tennis courts, and the Recreation Park basketball court.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all right. Ooh, Eric beat you to it. Any questions? Have a first and a second. Any questions, discussion? All in favor? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
We
sir.
would like to wait until after we have approval for, or get the RFP back to do the budget amendments, to actually do the.
right amount.
Yes, to make sure it's the right amount.
Sure, we can do that.
So we would like to hold on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve, is that Seth? Let's go back. We'll go back so we can get him out of here so he didn't have to stay. Okay, we're going to take a quick step back. We're going to go back to Section 6. Our Eagle Scout candidate, Seth Smith, is going to present an Eagle Scout project. If you want to come up, sir, let us know what's up.
Thank you for having me. My project plan is to install 9 wire baskets and poles for Raymore Recreational Park for him, and leveling them with gravel and concrete.
Okay? Good. We all look at you. You're our disc golf. He's our disc golf expert. Have you met Seth?
No, I have not.
You have. This is our disc golf expert here.
I passed you in the car the other day. I kind of waved and talked to Steve for a minute. Have you walked the course in the back?
I have for a little bit, but I plan to do a little more touring around next weekend.
Yeah, I believe all of the basket locations are marked with a wooden stake and a pink flyer. There's a map as well that the city has on.
I have 2
file.
copies of
Yeah.
the maps.
There's a few things that we've been discussing changing, which I should mention to the park board as well. Hole 18 crosses that edge of the practice area for like some football and soccer and some other things over there on hole 18. I don't know if you guys know where that's at, but what we decided to do was use the basket location for hole 10 as 18, and then shorten hole 10 to another location that's just in line with where it was. So basically, it's all on the east side of the sidewalk or the trail. So that's a little bit different, but you might have showed them those two.
Yeah, staff will be going out there with Seth and walking through the whole course. We'll actually be there demonstrating how to do the first one. We'll probably have a staff member on site the day that the project is going on. He's a member of, some of you all know Dan Barnes, of his scout group, so done a lot of projects with us. They all turn out great, so looking forward to working with Seth.
So you're doing all 9?
Whole 9.
How long is it going to take you?
I would believe it would take me a day, but if I can squeeze in more workers, I believe I could get it done in less than a day.
Nice.
I can.
Nice.
Could I ask him to explain exactly I didn't get the first part of your presentation. What are you wanting to do? I know you're wanting to work with disc golf pads, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Baskets.
The baskets.
The holes.
Oh, okay.
The pads are where you tee from.
Okay.
Yeah.
You end at the
Yeah.
basket or hole.
Okay.
They
All right.
have metal sleeves
Yes.
that you slide the baskets into,
Right.
and you have to dig a hole, put the sleeve in, and concrete it, and gravel, and get it set, and then
And-
you can slide the basket in and lock it.
Okay, so that's what you're going to do?
Yes, ma'am.
And you plan on doing that in one day?
Well, the whole project, my scoutmaster told me it would take at least one day.
I would
He's
imagine
strong.
so.
You can do it one day.
You can do it today.
Flex for it.
I have a question.
Okay, I would need 20 to maybe 25 people, including friends, family members, and of course my scout mates.
Now I understand better the one day.
Yeah. It's not just him, I don't think.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Staff will be helping also. We'll be actually drilling the holes with our auger bits to
Okay,
save a little bit of time. They'll be putting the gravel in, leveling the sleeves up, actually mixing the concrete, pouring it, and then basically cleaning up afterwards. So
and will he need any finances for this?
this is actually a budgeted project
Oh, okay.
that we've already budgeted. Usually whenever they have that, the city goes ahead and pays for all that.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
do we have the
Good
same
job.
limitation of weather, temperature, like we have for the other? I mean, it's usually just a bag or two for the,
Yeah, yeah, it'll definitely want to be 40 degrees.
Okay.
I think Seth, we talked about, he's planning on doing it in March, so we shouldn't have too much problem there.
yeah.
Shouldn't. You know it's gonna be 20 degrees all March now. Thank you, sir.
Probably.
Thank you.
Probably.
Thank you. The
And I'm,
Midwest Snowmageddon's coming.
I'm also aware that there are safety hazards that need to be looked over and taken care of. So any stuff like that happening, it will be taken in action. Such as we do have a nurse in the troop, and we also contact any emergency vehicles if necessary.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other questions? No, we appreciate your help. We're glad we can help you. Good mutual relationship we got going here. So come March 31st, we hope to see the baskets up.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And what badge will you get for that?
I'm sorry.
Do you get a badge for that?
Well,
For your
not,
project?
not necessarily a badge, but it counts to my Eagle board review,
Oh,
so I
okay.
can
All right.
complete that step, and so I can get Eagle whenever possibly, as soon as I can before I turn 18.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, let's go back to new business, item C. This is a recreation baseball field renovation project. Steve, I'm gonna let you take this one.
Excuse me. The park board has budgeted $75,000 in each of the fiscal year 2014 and 2015 capital budgets to replace one backstop and fencing each year for a total of 2 field renovations by the end of fiscal year 2015. The approved 2014 through 2018 capital improvement plan includes the replacement of a backstop and fencing for the remaining 2 fields to conclude the renovation project in 2017. Staff issued a request for proposal on December 4th, 2014 for the 2014 Field 6 and 2015 Field 8 Recreation Park Baseball Field Renovation Project. Proposals were received and opened on December 30th. 2014, a total of 3 proposals were received. The lowest best bid was submitted by Geyer Fence Company. Staff has checked references and found them to be satisfactory. Staff recommends award of the contract for the baseball field renovations project to Geyer Fence Company in the amount of $147,000. I will take any questions.
Any questions? No questions? Nobody has anything to say? I do. So before I get started, I just want to know if anybody wants to say anything. This is one of the items we talked to.
Just clarification, this is for 2 fields, 147.
This is for 2 fields, yes.
Thanks.
We did talk about this in our budget meeting last week, and I was opposed, and then I was on board, and I think I'm opposed again. I still think it's a lot of money for what we get, to be quite honest. I don't think it would bring in enough revenue to justify spending $75,000 on each field. That's my opinion. I don't think we do it. We get $59,000 for baseball, softball, in program fees. We get $6,000 in park rentals, and we make just under 30 in park concession revenue for the baseball, softball program. So that's $95,000 per year. And we're talking about spending $75,000 on one field that, I mean, right now, we're already making $95,000. To do that, we'd have to increase our revenue almost 100% to make up that difference. And I can't see us spending that money per field. That's my opinion. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
But that's what was budgeted. So
I agree.
Why? And your logic makes sense, but it's what was budgeted. So somebody thought that amount of money when that budget was created. I'm asking. That's what I.
Do you want to know my opinion on the budget? So in 2014, it was approved in CIP, and we went with it. Last year, I will say, in my opinion, it was hammered through last year. We did our budget last year 2 months earlier than we've done it, and when this topic came up, we started to have that discussion in executive session. At the time, we were also coming off the dog park, where this city council had budgeted money, and then when we met and talked about it, they said they didn't want to spend the money on it. My logical thinking, let's just push it through, and when it comes time to spend the money, then we can have the discussion about it. That's my take on the whole deal, but just because it was budgeted doesn't mean we have to spend it. If you want to spend it because it was budgeted, we can vote on it. I'm just giving my opinion. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when I've been out there, I'm not a baseball person, but as I look at the backstops, to me, they, are rusted and older, than what, from my understanding, current backstops need to be. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know, what do you guys think? Is it something that we need?
Do you mind?
Go ahead.
I believe it is something that we need. The backstops, you are correct. They are, one of them's twisted. They are all of the old style curved over what these new backstops would be, 30 foot straight up in the air. So that eliminates possible foul balls coming back and hitting a player or a official at the games. The appeal of those being rusted and things, we can't do anything with those. So putting in these new ones, not only is a safety factor, we also have, the coated fence with the chain link. It'll take away from where it's curling and having those sharp edges. It will also eliminate maintenance issues as well. With the mow strip that we have that is included in this RFP, having a 12-inch, Geyer actually went in with a 12-inch concrete pad, which is a mow strip underneath that fence. It'll help strengthen our fence. That is also where we currently feel like we can gain on sponsorships. In 2012, the department hosted one tournament. In 2013, we had one day, so the other three rained out. Those rainouts we virtually eliminated by putting in all new infield fines this last year in 2014. We had 3 days of rainouts, but we actually hosted this year 5 tournaments. On my calendar as of right now, we have 13 weekends booked. Now, I do not have the deposits in yet, but we have another tournament organization that has come in, and I have 11 weekends right now. And they all were pleased with the fields, but they are also pleased with knowing that those fields are getting improved because we did such a great stride last year. So not only the safety factor for those backstops, but having that appeal will also help bring in sponsorships and give us more opportunity to provide beautification to that ballpark.
Yes, sir.
When I think back about when we had these discussions about the baseball fields and what we should invest in them and what we should do, and what I remember is, at least for me, was that we should strengthen what our strengths are. and I think our baseball complex is one of our strengths as a Parks and Rec department, and I think this just reinforces that asset. And I think at some point you have to keep investing in and improving upon those assets, or we'll fall behind. And I think that's when we had the discussions before about baseball. I think it is one of our strengths, and that's why I think that at least I supported it in the CIP. So it seems like a lot of money, but that's what it cost. That's what it cost.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have, last year you had 5 tournaments, you said. This year you have 13,
11. 11 scheduled at this time.
So that will bring in more to the concession stands also.
Not only rental revenue, but concession stand as
Right.
well.
Right, so I think it's a good idea to have the fencing put in. I agree that we need to update and we need to stay in good shape. And if they are, the ones that are there are rusted, I think that's not a good idea to leave them up there with the children
Well,
playing.
and with the coating, having that coating will also give a longer life expectancy for the fencing
Okay,
versus the standard chain link.
right.
Yes, sir.
John, I had a question about Geyer Fence. I know they do great work, but they also, I'm surprised, they're usually pretty darn expensive. Do they give some assurances that this is a hard figure, they're not gonna hit us with supplements?
No, we would enter into the contract and they would have to stick to that
Okay.
price of that contract.
Okay.
So no other additional fees.
I also like to add, I agree that we need to upgrade and continue appearances. If you're going to develop a reputation for have first-class competitive tournaments in play, you have to look like you're first class. I mean, you could put good play product out there in a junk pile, and your junk pile image is gonna live, not the quality of your play.
Just for my own reference, field 6 and 8, sorry, field 6 and 8, are those the 2 of the 4 that back up? And so do the other 2 fields have the 30-foot, or is this eventually something we're gonna need to do with the other 2?
That's the other 2 in the existing 2014, 2018 capital improvement fund, that one each year for 2016 and one 2017 is proposed. That's what we'll be talking about in the CIP budget meetings.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I heard, I don't see this listed, and maybe I'm missing it. Does this include field renovations of the infields? Or is this just,
No, we did that in 2014.
okay, so this price doesn't include
No,
that? Okay,
no,
thank you.
it does not. It's new fence, new dugouts, new dugout covers, and the mow strip.
Yes, sir. I'm presenting Mr. Fearborn. He had his finger up.
To Commissioner Castleman's comments, when the city council, because the park board has approved $150,000 on this, and normally when we get into public works projects that are bigger than this one, and admittedly, this is in the grand scheme of things, this is a fairly simple project as far as what they're going to be doing. But normally the motion at the council level is to approve the RFP amount, but allow the parks, in this case, the Parks and Rec director, to make changes if they were to come back and say, hey, we need to hook this around, it's gonna be another $400. You allow them to make changes up to the budget constraint amount. In other words, in this case, it's only $3,000, but if there were some of those, they wouldn't have to stop the entire project if there was nothing, if you had a desert out there and come back, wait for a month to come back before you all, you've approved them to spend that $3,000 if it's necessary, and the Parks and Rec director feels it's a continuation of the project. Just a suggestion.
Any other discussion?
I'm making a motion then, that we and this is for an RFP. That, all right, to approve this.
To approve for contract.
To approve for contract, thank you, John. To approve for contract with Geyer Fence Company. I did pronounce that right, I hope. For the amount of $147,000, and that Parks at this point, our Parks Administration have the right to, or the ability to make any adjustment up to the budgeted amount of $150,000 if needed.
Second. All right, I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Any board member comment this evening? None? All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session for State Statute 610-021 subset 3, personnel matters. Have a second?
Second.
Have a second? All in favor? Unanimous. Oh, yeah, we got to do a roll call vote. Sorry.
Roll call, sorry.
vote. Mr. Haddock? Aye. Yeah. Monique? Yeah. Ms. Haddishell?
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood?
Aye.
Mr. Manson? Aye. Ms. Seemers? Mr. Castleman? Ms. Sepola? Chairman Harris? aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Is it really? It's Doctor? Doctor?
Thank you.